everybody. Welcome to another episode of Mr. Haig's Class Podcast. So, you're a student, you're sitting in a class, and you're listening to the teacher lecture, and you absolutely hate it. You don't want to be there, you're bored, you're yawning, you're daydreaming, you're shifting, you're texting, you're on the phone, you're finding some form of entertainment. Get through the class. Wow. You know, I'm fortunate because in my class, and I teach digital media arts, that's kind of rare for me. I don't see that, although I do have an occasion, somebody who's drifting away and doesn't want to be there, especially those who claim that they don't like computers, even though the computers are all around them, but they don't like working in the computers. And that's fine. You know, you don't have to like computers. You don't have to like biology. You don't have to like English. You don't have to like math. It's whether you like it or not, it's kind of irrelevant. And, you know, you're there. You got to make the most of your time. So let's analyze this, first of all, you and I, and kind of figure out what is it that makes a class boring, or, you know, what can you do if you find a class that's really boring? And it may not be the content of the class. It could be that sometimes, and I've been in lecture halls too, you know, I've went to school too, and sometimes the teacher has a very monotone voice. This is the cell structure, everybody. This is the mitochondria. This is the nucleus. This is the Golgi apparatus. And this is the lysosomes. And each one of them have a very special function, and we do... okay, great. I get it. You know, we get bored with a lot of things. And of course, with Generation Z and past that, you know, all the latest generations, I mean, they're so used to things in a fast-moving world. I mean, text messaging and the TikToks and the craziness behind social media, we kind of demand that instant gratification. I guess that may be the reason why even baseball is kind of drifting away for the younger generation. I don't see many baseballers anymore. I mean, it used to be when I was a kid. I mean, you'd have at least 200 people trying out for the high school baseball team. Not much anymore. I mean, now you'd be lucky to have a JV squad or a freshman squad. Everybody goes right up to varsity, which I think is crazy. So boredom is a big problem when the new world meets the old world, because, I mean, in my world, you know, it's not really boring to play baseball. In fact, I actually wish I could play it again. And when I do get a chance to get into the softball field, I don't get bored at all. In fact, I'm kind of excited, even though sometimes I'm standing there in the outfield and just kind of waiting for the ball to come to me. And some innings, it doesn't come to me at all. It may not come to me for a couple of innings. So I just kind of wait there for the ball to show up. But still, it's nice to be out there, enjoy the crowd, and, you know, play the games. It's quite refreshing. And of course, you know, we all play, well, not all, but some of us play golf. And that's not a very exciting game, but if you play it, it's strategically very, very, it's thought-provoking. You know, how you hit the ball, how you putt, how you drive the ball, placement, all that fun stuff. So I guess it's for the individual. But let's go back into the classroom. And again, I get it. Not all classes are exciting. I get that. So why don't we go ahead and list 10 ways that you can fight finding a class being bored. And sometimes it's just a shift within the self that makes even the most boring class or the most interesting class. You know, listen, I was a student once, and I found some classes kind of boring. I found biology boring. I found English boring. I found math boring. I found everything boring except PE and, of course, except for computers. Yes, that's right. Love being in front of the computers and electronics. Always loved learning about programming and things of that nature. Artwork was also another intriguing class that I had, but wasn't really much into the core subjects. However, it was something that I had to overcome. I got it done, you know, whether I liked it or not, or whether I was bored or not was irrelevant. I had to get through it, and I knew that. And so I just kind of dealt with it and did the best I could. And I mean, of course, it helps to take a class that you're really interesting, but I mean, in life, you're not going to find everything interesting. There's going to be things that you do that are boring. Sitting in traffic is boring, and unless you're, like me, I pass the time and listen to some good audiobooks or talk on the phone. Handheld, hands-free rather. I'm not saying get a phone and talk with it pressed against your ear. Definitely use hands-free. So I'm just saying that I'm going to present to you 10 ways how you can defeat boredom and go through a class that you may not like. And so hopefully this will kind of shift things a little bit for you, because the bottom line is, if you're bored or if you find something that you don't like, okay, that's kind of on you. It's your issue. You got to deal with that, okay? Because while I may have a few students who find the class boring, I got a ton more who find it intriguing. And so if you're bored, that's kind of more your issue. You need to do something about that. On why do you find a class boring? But at the same time, as I mentioned before, there are things in life that will be boring. Whether it's boring or not, you still got to go through it and get things done. You still got to get the good grades. You still got to study. You still got to be productive, and you need to get the good results. All right, let's go with the first of 10. Number 1, change your attitude. That's right. Not everything in life is meant to be exciting or intriguing. Sometimes you just have to deal with things that are boring. And I remember myself being in class and I was bored, but I still took notes. If I was too exhausted to take notes, I would record the lecture and go from there, and we'll talk about that. But you need to shift your attitude and shift it in a way that you got to still produce. You got to get the good grades. The boredom, the apathy, that belongs to you, not to the teacher, not to other students in the class. You got to change your attitude. You still have to produce. You still have to get the results. And that's the bottom line. Okay, number 2, 2 out of 10. Everything you are taught has something to do with life. Classes are meant to be challenging. And boredom, that adds to the challenge. Apathy, that adds to the challenge. I'll say it again. Everything you are taught has something to do with life. And you may not think so if you're a high school student or maybe a young college student. You may be asking yourself, well, what does it have to do with my life? Well, the answer is you don't know. Life is big. And here I am at 50 years old, and I look back and I am so grateful that I learned the subjects that I learned. Everything has something to do with it. Whenever I listen to music, I think of my history of rock and roll. I've worked with musicians when I had my own business. So I kind of knew which musicians had impacted the world. And I say, hey, what about blah, blah, blah? Maybe take after them. Or, for instance, in English class, I am one of the worst spellers there are, but I have to find ways to improve my spelling. Otherwise, I'm just going to sound unintelligent. So everything you're taught has something to do with life. Even though if you don't see it, it'll come back to you. Mark my word, it will come back to you. You will run into these issues, and getting a good sound education, you'll know what to do, how to solve a problem, especially math. Let me tell you something. When you do your taxes, oh yeah, figuring out interest rates, figuring out your FICO scores, figuring out statistics, analysis, all these crazy stuff. You're going to have to figure this all out. And understanding math, understanding numbers is a very important skill set to have. All right, number 3 out of 10. Consider your apathy as something to be remedied. Think of it as a sickness or an illness or, God forbid, a disease. If you got a headache, you got to solve it. If you got the cold, you've got to solve it. If you got the flu, you got to do something about it or stay home. And here we are in the age of COVID. Okay, well, we got to deal with that too. Treat your apathy and boredom. Ask yourself, why am I bored? Was it about this class that's boring to me? What is it about me? And you got to seek help about that. Am I the one who's bored? Am I the one who's boring? Is it my lack of interest because something happened in my life that makes me not interested in school or wants to just go through the day and go back into my room and just kind of hide underneath my pillow and that's it? So treat boredom as something to be remedied. You need to do something about that. Talk to your counselor, talk to your teacher, say, hey, I find your class boring. Well, you don't want to say it like that, but say, hey, what can I do? I got this situation. This is really not my thing, but can you give me some advice on what I can do and they might give you some answers. And if you're not comfortable asking the teacher, you may want to talk to a counselor or a friend or somebody who's took that class. And how did you get through it? So find ways of doing that. But it's really, again, goes back to number one, change your attitude. So treat your apathy and your boredom and your dislike as something that has to be remedied. Of course, it doesn't mean that you have to pop pills or something like that. But there is a shift that you need to make, and you need to ask yourself, why do I find this boring? And I bet you that most students, if they find one class boring, they might find many classes boring. So the issue is not the classes. The issue is that you get bored easily. Now that's something personal. All right. Number 4. One way to defeat boredom is to team up with other students. Start a study group. Get together with some people. Get some flashcards, depending on the subject. Get the books ready. Get the computer. Team up. Ask yourself questions. And make it a fun time. Go to the Starbucks or the Coffee Bean and have some coffee, get some donuts, go enjoy and kind of like converse and don't make it all about school. Talk about personal stuff. Make some friends. That's a great way of trying to defeat boredom, is to make school as a team or a group environment. Group up with some people. Preferably with some people who get results. But it's a great way to kind of like make something more fun, because now you're going to class for other reasons, not just for the subject. You're going there to meet your friends. Hey, how you doing? What's up? Hey, you want to meet for coffee afterwards and we can go over this stuff? Yeah, sure. Let's do that. All right. Number 5 out of 10. Do not walk into the classroom tired. That's right. You don't want to go in there all exhausted. You don't want to go into the boxing ring all bruised up and cut up and not fixed up. You want to go there ready to go. Okay, if you're exhausted and tired and you find a class boring, what do you think is going to happen to you? And falling asleep in a class is one of the most biggest insults that you can do to me as a teacher. I'd rather have talking students than a sleeping student. Because when you're sleeping, it just means that you don't care. It just seems to me that you don't really want to be there. So why am I wasting my time lecturing to you if you're just going to fall asleep? Go home. I'm okay with people yawning, but sleeping, no. So get in there, be alert. Don't go in there tired. All right, number 6 out of 10, come prepared. So you're bored, you don't like the class, but you got your equipment with you. You can actually record the lecture. You can basically press on a button, one of those recording apps, and record this lecture, and you can listen to it later on. And maybe in the meantime, you can, if you want to doodle and pretend you're taking notes, okay. But at least by recording, you can skip through all the non-important stuff that a teacher may, like when he gets up and help people, you can skip all that. And when you do record, a 50-minute lecture can turn into a 30-minute lecture, because a lot of times the instructor's answering questions or looking over somebody's shoulder and seeing what's happening, or, something. It's sort of like in football. Who needs to record the huddle? Okay, we want to see just the action. Okay, so you're fast forwarding or rewinding Another thing, of course, bring your pen and paper. Of course, if you're in the modern age, bring your iPad and pencil. Okay, that's what you want to do. You want to use all the devices. Did you know in Google Docs you can there's a recording button there, and if you have a Chromebook or a Windows or a MacBook, you can. It doesn't matter because Google Docs is Google Docs. There's a button there that allows you to record the lectures. Okay, really good stuff, and also write it out for you. So it's taking notes for you. There's ways to do that. All right. Number 7 out of 10, if all is not working, if it's just not working for you, and it's just something you feel that you're wasting your time and wasting your money, as much as I hate to say this, but sometimes you just might have to drop the class. I did that. And I dropped the class not because I found it boring, because it was physiology, I believe, or zoology at Arizona State, and I just found it ridiculous because the teacher was just really, really hard, and she would just give us the most difficult exams, and the questions would be like, when and where did you give this information? And we were the average grade in the class was like a D or a C. It was crazy. And it came to a point where it kind of challenged my ethics and my values and my principles. Zoology is a study of animals, and one of the things we had to do was dissect. There was live rabbits. We had to put them to sleep and open them up and kind of see what's inside. And I absolutely refused to do that. Not going to do it. I wanted to grab those rabbits and free them. But that would result in me being in big trouble. So I dropped the class. It was against my principles. I found it ridiculous. And once I did that, my grades skyrocketed. It shot up through the roof. And of course, if a class is just not your cup of tea, talk to your counselor and just say, what, this is not working out for me. Can you find me a different class? But I don't think you should ever drop a class because you're bored. You drop a class because it goes against your principles, you go against who you are, or it's just not something you're comfortable studying. But don't go to a counselor and say, I'm bored here, I just want to, because what makes you think the next class is not going to be even more boring? Not your thing either. How foolish would you look there? But again, if it's just not your thing, just drop the class, and hopefully you'll find a class that's more intriguing and more up your alley. All right, so number 8, set somewhere or sometime where you can engage the professor or the teacher. In other words, go talk to the teacher, go talk to the professor, and try to talk to them outside of the classroom. And when you do converse with them, kind of schmooze with them, kind of, have small talk with them. So what are your hobbies? How's the family? What are the things that you enjoy doing? I mean, have you eaten at this restaurant? What do you think about, stuff around here? What do you think about, the Dodgers or the Mets or the Yankees or the Rams or, what do you think about that? So talk about other things. And once you start liking the teacher and getting personal with them and getting to know them, believe me, you're going to start enjoying going to class. You're going to want to go there and say, hey, there's my buddy over there teaching the class. And I'm cool with that. Some professors and teachers, well, they don't want to go into personal conversation with a student, and you can't blame them. I personally do. I don't mind it. Yeah, I got a son. I've been married for so many years. Got a great home and enjoy my job. My hobbies, I lift weights. I like power walking, like fine dining, yada, 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 things like that. I'd be happy to discuss my stuff with them, and that's cool. I got nothing to hide. Like I said, some teachers do. But, engage the teacher. Talk with them. Ask the questions and make it a one-on-one situation, and that's definitely an energy booster. Number 9 out of 10, read or get educated ahead of time. So most core subjects involve a textbook, and most teachers give you a syllabus. So find out what is going to be discussed ahead of time. read the subject, read the chapter, and get familiarized with what they're going to discuss before you get to class. That way the terms and the principles and the subject matter is not going to be foreign to you. It's going to be like, what are they talking about? So, you get all this information in your head, in your mind. It helps, okay? And you're like, oh yeah, I read about that, or I saw that somewhere in this book. Now, if in my class, which doesn't involve a textbook, like for instance, I teach Photoshop. And the latest thing I taught was the pen tool, where people or artists, they use that tool to create clip arts or trace and create cartoons. So if you wanted to learn about the pen tool beforehand, go to YouTube. There's so many tutorials on the pen tool on Photoshop. Just kind of watch and see and do. That's really a really good thing. One of the things I have my students do is listen and list. In other words, I have them watch a video before we do the exercise, before I guide them through a guided practice. I want them to watch so they know what moves are going to be made beforehand. Now, that's me. Many teachers don't do that. So whatever the case may be, come prepared. Understand the subject of discussion ahead of time. All right, and finally, number 10, active learning. That's right. Raise your hand. Ask questions. Ask questions at least once a class session. Ask questions twice a class sessions. Sometimes you just want to raise your hand and listen, not to learn the stuff, but to make a point. Even though you're not interested, make a point. And believe it or not, that gets you going. And active learning is a really, really helpful way to get you stay focused and make the class less boring and makes you feel like you're really part of things. All right, well, those are my top 10. Hopefully you got them all. I'll read them one more time. Number 1, change your attitude. Okay, change your attitude of the class. Not everything is meant to be exciting. Number 2, everything you are taught has something to do with life. Classes are meant to be challenging. Life is challenging. So you don't know when you might run into these situations again. Number 3, consider your apathy and boredom and dislike of a class to be a problem that has to be remedied. Go seek help. Why do I always get bored? Or why am I bored? Or why is this? Or why is that? Find out. Number 4, team up. Okay? Socialize. Find some people to study and work with. Create study groups. Meeting over coffee. Meeting over a restaurant. Number 5, do not walk into the classroom tired. Grab a Snickers bar. Get some coffee. Spruce up. Something cool. Get ready, get jived, go to class. Number 6, come prepared. Okay, bring your tools, bring your computers, bring your iPhones, bring your Androids, bring your apps. Okay, get ready to take notes or record the session. Number 7, the worst of all, is drop the class. But don't drop because you're bored. Drop because it's challenging or it's not your thing or it goes against your principles. But drop the class if it's just not your thing. Number 8, engage the professor. Meet them outside of class. Talk to them. Schmooze with them. Small talk. Things like that. And before you know it, you're friendly with each other. If they allowed, of course, every professor is different. Number 9. Read ahead of time or watch a YouTube video ahead of time, depending on the class and depending on the book. Read something ahead of time. Make sure you're familiar with the content before it's discussed. And number 10, active learning. Raise your hand, ask questions, get answers, and get an A, get a B. Do well. All right, so if you have any questions about this, all this stuff is on my website, mrhakesclass.com. And with that being said, I wish you all the best and much success in your academic endeavors. Stay tuned for the next episode. We will launch it pretty soon. This is Mr. Haig wishing you well, signing out.